Hello, San Jose Police? Hello? San Jose Police? She's probably gonna be 10 by 5. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
On September 13th, 2018, Karen Navarra, a 67-year-old woman from San Jose, was found dead in her home. Initially, her death appeared to be a suicide, as she was slumped in her kitchen chair, a knife in her hand. But detectives quickly noticed troubling signs. Blunt force trauma and deep stab wounds to her head and neck didn't look like self-inflicted injuries. Besides, around the house, drawers were pulled out and items were scattered as if someone had broken in, yet nothing valuable seemed to be missing. There was no obvious suspect, and since Karen lived alone, no witnesses could explain what had happened. Just when it seemed like the case had hit a dead end, two unlikely sources brought a breakthrough: Karen's Fitbit and her neighbor's Ring doorbell. Who would have thought these gadgets could hold the key to solving a murder? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. Karen Navarra, fondly known as Cookie by her family and friends, was born on October 7, 1950, in California. She grew up on a ranch in Warner Heights with her parents, Adele and Dominic Navarra. Dominic owned a pharmacy, and Karen was always by his side, helping out and learning the ropes. Later, she pursued a science degree at a local university, and soon after graduation, she landed a job as a pharmacy technician at San Jose Hospital. She loved her work so much that even by the age of 67, she was still dedicated to this job there. Tragedy struck in 1996 when Karen's father passed away, followed shortly by her grandmother. Following her grandmother's passing, Karen inherited a house in San Jose, which was conveniently close to her job. Though she lived there alone, Karen wasn't entirely without company. She had two beloved cats whom she treated like family. Living alone wasn't unusual for someone her age. According to California census data, about 36% of women over 65 live alone, and Karen was one of them. But she stayed connected with family, who lived in the surrounding areas. Even if they didn't visit frequently, they often called to check in. Karen actually had an active life. She was known for being cheerful and kind to everyone at the hospital where she worked. Karen cared about her health and wanted to stay fit, so she bought a Fitbit to track her steps and keep herself active. She kept busy juggling work, home, and her garden, which she loved tending. According to her mother, Karen hadn't been in a romantic relationship for a long time, but she didn't seem to mind. She appeared content living with her cats and enjoying her quiet life. But everything changed on September 8, 2018. Known for her dedication and reliability, Karen never missed a day without a reason. That's why when she didn't come to work on Monday, September 10th, her coworkers immediately noticed. At first, they tried not to overreact. Maybe she wasn't feeling well or had some urgent personal matter. But when Karen didn't show up again on Tuesday, concern turned into real worry. It was completely unlike her to skip work without any explanation. By Wednesday, her absence felt alarming. Fearing that something might have happened to her, Karen's colleagues couldn't wait any longer. They contacted the police and requested a welfare check on her home. However, for reasons unknown, that welfare check wasn't carried out right away. Until Thursday, September 13th, one of her closest coworkers, Amber Ashfaq, decided to take matters into her own hands. When she got to Karen's house, she noticed something strange. The door was unlocked. With high alert, Amber gently pushed the door open, just enough to peek inside. What she saw would definitely traumatize her for life. No friend should ever have to witness such a scene.
San Jose Emergency, what are you reporting?
Yeah, I'm reporting regarding my coworker. She didn't show up for work for last 2 days. I came here and I'm knocking at the door. She didn't answer the door. I just slightly pressed the door. She is sitting on the chair and then her face is all black spots on her face. I got scared and came out. I don't know if she's alive or we need emergency medical
When the officers arrived, they tried to hope for the best.
Has she moved at all?
Thank you very much.
Is she moving at all?
I just went inside and I just
Does she
came out.
nail like she's passed away?
They carefully approached the house. When the door was opened, the brutal truth lying before their eyes was even more horrible than anyone could imagine.
Blue. San Jose Police. She's probably gonna be 1055. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Did that herself? Yeah. William 1, subject's 1055.
What's waiting for them in the kitchen area was a real shocker. Karen was lying lifeless on the ground by a chair at the dining table, just as her friend stated, and was holding an 8-inch kitchen knife in her right hand. At first glance, it looked like Karen had indeed committed suicide. But as the investigation unfolded, some evidence soon surfaced, suggesting that something far darker was at play. Experienced detectives were summoned to Karen's house, and they instantly put their skills to work.
One of the very first things that I noticed were some of the wounds to her head and neck. The wounds were very deep and very violent. This woman had been deceased for some time.
There were at least 12 deep, intrusive wounds to the middle of her face and the right side of her head, along with a gaping slit on the right side of her neck. These injuries made it clear that she had endured immense pain before her death. It was so brutal that it felt personal. Besides, there was a distinct lack of blood splatter. If Karen had cut her own throat, there should have been significant blood spray at the scene. This crucial detail suggested one thing. Her throat had been slit after she was already dead. So the most burning question emerged: who could have done something so horrific to her? Hoping for answers, investigators turned to the last person who might have any insight. Amber, her coworker.
She was my coworker for the past 7 years.
So sorry.
And then she was supposed to work yesterday. She didn't. She always calls, she didn't show up.
But instead of bringing clarity, Amber's words only raised more questions. Karen didn't seem to have any enemies. There were no signs of conflict, no indication that she had problems with anyone. This wasn't one of those cases where a likely culprit stood out from the start. And yet, someone had committed this brutal act. With no clear motive or obvious suspect, the critical question remained: who could be responsible for this, and why? A sergeant and his team began their investigation. Something immediately caught their attention: the stark contrast between the house's exterior and interior. From the outside, it looked neat and ordinary, but once inside, the scene was strangely chaotic. The disarray suggested that this house might be hiding crucial secrets. The detectives noticed 4 slices of pizza, wrapped in tin foil, and 2 glasses on the table. The implication was clear: Karen likely had a guest over shortly before the incident. This raised more unsettling questions. Was the last person to see her responsible for what happened? Or had an intruder struck after the guest left, catching Karen alone and off guard? The disorder hinted at a possible burglary, but something about it didn't feel right. Drawers were pulled open, yet nothing appeared to be missing. TVs, computers, laptops, even Karen's car in the garage, everything of value was still there. Nothing had been taken, which was unusual for a typical break-in.
I worked burglary just before I came to homicide, and I've examined several hundred burglaries. That's not generally how a burglary looks.
This definitely wasn't a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong, but far more calculated. It's the work of a mastermind who knew exactly what they were doing.
We had our concerns that the scene had been staged.
Just too many things don't add up. So the initial thoughts were, it's undetermined. We're going to treat this as a homicide.
Despite searching Karen's home and interviewing her close friends, detectives still struggled to find a clear timeline of her death. But while closely examining Karen's body, they noticed a small but crucial detail. She was wearing a black Fitbit on her left wrist. That little device, designed to track fitness data, stored more than just steps, it tracked her heart rate too. If the Fitbit had recorded the exact moment her heart stopped, it could give investigators the precise time of her death. It was a breakthrough unlike anything the detectives had encountered before. They knew the Fitbit data could be vital, but accessing it wouldn't be easy. They needed a warrant, and getting one would take time. So while waiting for one, they focused on other evidence. Starting with Karen's autopsy, what they discovered next sent chills down their spines. The forensic team had shaved portions of Karen's hair to expose shocking injuries hidden beneath. Her skull was cracked, and deep, violent wounds covered her head, so severe that any one of them would have instantly incapacitated her. This detail was crucial. If she had been instantly incapacitated, there was no way she could have slashed her own neck. This wasn't a suicide, it was murder. With that concrete proof, detectives intensified their efforts to find the killer. One key clue surfaced during the search of Karen's home, a receipt from a nearby grocery store. It was time-stamped September 7th at 4:27 p.m. This became a crucial lead. Had Karen been with someone that day? Did she meet someone after shopping? Determined to find out, detectives visited the grocery store and reviewed surveillance footage. The video showed Karen entering the store alone, shopping calmly, and appearing completely at ease. More importantly, when she left, there was no sign of anyone following her. This ruled out the possibility of a stalker. At 4:30 p.m. on September 7th, Karen was alive and well. But then came the chilling question. Who did she meet after her last errand? The receipt hinted at food for many, but there was no one to account for. Detectives pressed on, interviewing Karen's neighbors. Some recalled seeing her walking her dog on the morning of September 7th. Others mentioned hearing loud music coming from her house a few nights prior. Unfortunately, none of these leads provided answers about the events leading to her death. Since Karen lived alone and had no close relatives besides her parents, detectives turned to the one source who might know something more: her mother, Adele, and stepfather, Tony Aiello. The coroner had already delivered the tragic news to them, but investigators wasted no time.
We are charged with finding out what happened, getting to the truth, and figuring out who did what.
Yeah.
We're going to ask you a lot of questions.
Please.
It's okay.
I'm trying to think
But I want to answer him because we got to catch this person.
Adele was Karen's biological mother. After Karen's father passed away, Adele remarried Tony, a Korean War veteran, and he had been a part of the family for the past 8 years. However, Karen also had an older sibling, a brother from Adele's first marriage, who had tragically died in a motorcycle accident when Karen was just a teenager. According to Adele, her brother's death deeply affected Karen. It left an emotional scar, causing her to withdraw from those closest to her. She became more reserved, keeping much of her personal life to herself. After learning about Karen's troubled past, detectives turned their attention to Adele and Tony, asking them about the last time they had seen her, hoping to piece together the events leading up to that fateful day.
I brought the pizza with them.
So she
and
had
the
a...
cookies in a Ziploc bag.
Okay.
And it's the cookies that I make.
What day was that?
Saturday.
Do you remember about what time it was?
Around a little after 3 o'clock, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was middle of the afternoon sometime.
So Saturday the 8th, about 3 p.m. So there was nobody else that was there when you got there. Did she mention that she was going to have anybody over?
Yeah, she said she could have a company. When I brought the pizza and the cookies over there, she goes, "Oh, boy, we got pizza. We're going to have a party with my friends."
Tony mentioned that he had visited Karen's house on September 8th around 3 p.m. to drop off some pizza and cookies. He said everything seemed normal during his visit. Karen appeared fine, and they spent some time together without any signs of tension or trouble. But as the conversation continued, Tony revealed something that gave investigators a new significant lead. He mentioned seeing Karen's car pass by their house later that same day. What caught his attention was that she was not alone.
And there was a person on the other side, which you can't tell if it was a he or she.
Okay, but there was definitely one other person in the car
Oh,
with her.
yes.
Tony couldn't identify the person, but he believed it happened sometime after his visit, raising the possibility that this unknown individual might have played a role in Karen's murder. They could very well be the last one to see her alive, or they themselves had an ill intention with her. Detectives began searching for additional surveillance footage near Tony's house to verify his claim. CCTV footage along any possible route Karen might have taken past her mother and stepfather's house were retrieved. However, there was an unexpected problem. The area had low crime rates, meaning most houses didn't have cameras pointed toward the road. Instead, they only had cameras facing their doorsteps or driveways, which didn't help the investigation. After combing through several properties, the detectives finally recovered footage from a single camera positioned across the street. This one offered a clear view of the neighborhood and seemed promising. But as they reviewed the footage, there was no sign of Karen's car. They didn't spot it passing by at any point during the time Tony claimed he saw her. Thinking Tony might have mixed up the times, they expanded their search, reviewing footage from later that day. Still, nothing was found. This raised serious doubts about Tony's statement. But given his age, which was 90 at the time, it seemed unlikely he could have been physically involved in Karen's brutal death. Investigators leaned toward the possibility that he may have been confused rather than deceptive. Karen might have taken a different route, or perhaps the footage wasn't entirely reliable on timing. Without any clear evidence or new leads, the investigation hit a frustrating dead end. Eventually, detectives obtained a warrant to retrieve Karen's Fitbit data. However, they still had to wait a bit longer to access the specifics. Extracting data from the Fitbit wasn't as straightforward as they had hoped. Karen's Fitbit had been syncing through a Bluetooth connection on her desktop computer every 15 minutes, uploading data to Fitbit's servers via the internet. But the data wasn't stored locally on Karen's computer. The desktop merely acted as a gateway to the servers. This meant that retrieving the crucial information required assistance from Fitbit itself. Investigators contacted the company directly. They knew once the device was sent to Fitbit, it would take a few days for a full analysis. With time not on their side, the team had no choice but to continue their investigation by canvassing Karen's neighborhood, hoping to uncover additional clues. That's when they found something unexpected: a Ring doorbell camera on a nearby house that had captured activity outside Karen's home. A Ring video doorbell is designed to give instant alerts when someone rings the doorbell, allowing homeowners to see and speak with visitors from anywhere. But it can also function as a surveillance camera, as the built-in motion sensors will trigger video recording when movement is detected. In Karen's case, this new footage offered an unforeseen twist, potentially holding the key to unraveling what happened on the day of her murder. At exactly 3:12 p.m., a Toyota pulled into her driveway. The next clip, timestamped 3:35 p.m., showed that the Toyota had left. Unfortunately, the footage wasn't sharp enough to capture fine details. While it was clear that the car was a Toyota, the poor video quality made it impossible to identify the driver. The doorbell camera, after all, was designed to focus on people standing right in front of it, not vehicles in the background. Besides, this one wasn't positioned directly across from Karen's house. It was located at a corner, meaning the view of her driveway was distant and unclear. Despite these limitations, the footage provided a crucial lead. Investigators quickly connected the dots. They had already spoken to someone who owned a Toyota matching the one in the footage. This person also admitted to visiting Karen's house around that time, delivering biscotti and pizza. That was Tony, her 91-year-old stepfather. Moreover, neighborhood surveillance confirmed that Karen had not left her home after that. So Tony was the last person to see her alive, and his statement that he saw someone with her later was not true. With this new evidence in hand, detectives began to suspect that Tony might be more involved than they initially thought.
I had to take a step back and think to myself, okay, this is a 5-foot-tall, 90-year-old man. Is he capable of inflicting that kind of an injury to his stepdaughter? I mean, could he physically do that?
However, investigators still hadn't had any solid evidence directly linking Tony to Karen's death. The turning point only came when they obtained the long-awaited Fitbit data, crucial evidence that could uncover the truth about Tony's involvement. Fitbit provided several categories of data, including step count, movement, sleep patterns, and most importantly, heart rate. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the critical answer. When did Karen's heart actually stop? The data revealed that on September 8th, Karen's heart rate spiked sharply around 3:20 p.m., indicating a struggle or extreme distress. Moments later, it suddenly plummeted. By 3:23 p.m., the final record showed her heart had stopped completely, just minutes after Tony had reportedly left her house. This was the breakthrough investigators had been waiting for. The Fitbit data placed Tony at the scene during the exact time Karen was killed. With this damning evidence, officials moved swiftly to obtain an arrest warrant. On the 25th of September 2018, Tony was arrested on murder charges.
Sir, San Jose police, come over here. Oh, you betcha. Hi. Come over here. What's going on? Let me see your keys. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around. Wait, what is this?
Honestly, when we pieced all this together, I was kind of in shock. But like, look, this is just all lining up. I mean, we are following the evidence, and the evidence has taken us this direction.
I don't know.
Detectives wasted no time bringing Tony in for questioning. They laid out all the evidence in front of him, piece by piece, and explained the significance of the Fitbit data, emphasizing how it worked and why it mattered.
We had it analyzed for any movement that occurred. I will tell you this, that the movement stopped on the 8th of September, that same day that you went over to visit her. Okay? I'll also tell you that the heart rate monitor indicated when she passed. The heart rate monitor indicated she passed at 3:28.
And I was at 3:28.
You were there at 3:28. We need to know what happened.
What can I tell you? I'm not going to tell you anything. If I was at the long, I will remember. That's it. I have no answer.
You don't have an answer?
Initially, Tony stuck to his original story, insisting he had nothing to do with Karen's death. After some time, the detectives stepped outside for a moment, leaving Tony alone. That's when something strange happened.
Tony started doing exercises like Jack LaLanne. He was obviously still a fit man. I started to realize that he physically was definitely capable of committing this brutal homicide.
As the interrogation progressed, the detectives actually had a parallel operation underway. A team of crime scene investigators executed a search warrant at Adele and Tony's residence. It wasn't long before they found some alarming items. A small axe and a large butcher's meat cleaver with the same brand as the knife Karen held in her hand. But that wasn't all. They even found traces of blood on the sink, partially washed away. Especially, they uncovered bloodstains on several shirts and a camouflage raincoat, which was tucked away inside a shed on the property. Back in the interrogation room, detectives intensified their questioning, confronting Tony with the mounting evidence. The harder they pressed, the more excuses he came up with. When asked about the same brand cleaver, Tony brushed it off, explaining that he had been a butcher at one point in his life, so the knives were simply hand-me-downs, something families shared over time. And then about the bloody shirts, he said it was probably his own blood, as he had chopped himself many times. All these items were seized and sent to the lab for DNA testing.
Finding articles of clothing with blood on them is not necessarily abnormal inside a house. I understand that if someone cuts themselves, that there may be a smear of blood on their shirt or something of that nature, but there are different types of blood spatter that if you've seen them many, many times before, they're instantaneously recognizable. And that's what I was told was found on some of these shirts. Tony tried to explain that he had cut himself, but we actually looked at Tony physically. We looked at basically his entire body, and we found no indications of fresh cuts, no indications of healing cuts. So his statement didn't make sense.
Tony became visibly more anxious and confused. When the officer left him alone again, Tony's behavior took a bizarre turn. He began muttering to himself, seemingly having no idea that the room was under constant surveillance. This was the exact moment he made a critical mistake. Tony was close, so close to confessing at least part of the crime. He wasn't admitting it outright to the police, but he was admitting it to himself without even realizing it. Despite this, the case wasn't over yet. There was one thing that still remained a mystery. Why would a 90-year-old man, who was described by his family and his friends as really warm and loving, out of the blue kill his stepdaughter so mercilessly? As word spread about Tony's arrest, his family quickly hired a strong legal defense team to prepare for trial. Interestingly, during their investigation, the defense discovered a cigarette in Karen's kitchen. When tested, the cigarette returned several DNA markers belonging to an unknown Asian man. Neither Karen nor Tony smoked, making this detail unusual. However, just when the defense thought they had something, the prosecution brought up one critical point. The cigarette had no blood splatter on it, but was found on top of a blood-stained surface. It may have been placed there after the crime, perhaps in an attempt to frame someone else or divert suspicion. Then, detectives discovered something that shed light on Tony's possible motive. During the search of Tony and Adele's home, they found notes indicating concerns about estate transfers and financial troubles. It became apparent that Tony had been denied loans and was likely strapped for cash. There was also mention of a life insurance policy that Adele would have received upon Karen's death. Detectives began to believe that greed, possibly the promise of money, might have driven Tony to commit this brutal crime. And finally, the DNA test results for the blood found on Tony's jacket came back. The lab confirmed that the blood on the sleeve of Tony's camouflage jacket actually belonged to Karen. This was concrete, indisputable evidence linking Tony directly to the crime. Unlike the digital data from the Fitbit and Ring doorbell, which could potentially be challenged in court for inaccuracies, the DNA evidence was rock solid. After weeks of painstaking investigation, the prosecution now had everything they needed to build a compelling and airtight case against Tony. However, before the trial could begin, Tony was admitted to a local hospital due to worsening medical conditions. At 6:12 p.m. on September 10th, Tony was pronounced dead, having succumbed to pre-existing health issues after over a year awaiting trial. He was 91 years old. In the end, the case was never brought to trial, leaving many questions unanswered and denying Karen's family the chance for justice through the court system. Despite the evidence presented, certain outlets still doubted whether detectives had truly caught the right person. How a frail 90-year-old man suffering from an arthritic hip could have overpowered and killed Karen in such a brutal manner, and after that, even go out of his way to stage Karen's apparent suicide, disrupt the house to simulate a botched robbery, and plant a cigarette as a potential decoy. Tony's documented short-term memory issues further complicated the narrative. Both the defense and prosecution highlighted his memory lapses in their arguments. Could Tony have committed the crime, but later forgotten the details due to his condition? Furthermore, Tony's had a medical condition that caused his blood to clot rapidly, leading to easy bruising. If Tony had been involved in a violent struggle with Karen, it seemed likely that he would have displayed visible bruises or marks, but no such injuries were found on his body. The reliability of the Fitbit data was also questioned. While groundbreaking in its use, Fitbit devices are known to have occasional inaccuracies. Critics argued that basing part of the case timeline on potentially flawed data definitely left room for doubt. Throughout Tony's incarceration, his wife Adele stood steadfastly by his side. She firmly believed in his innocence, insisting, until his dying day, that the authorities had arrested the wrong man. Even now, Adele maintains that Tony was not responsible for Karen's murder, and that investigators failed to pursue other potential leads. As Karen used to mention, someone was watching her in the months leading up to her death. It remains unclear whether detectives thoroughly followed up on this disturbing detail. Without a trial or a clear resolution, the mystery surrounding Karen's death remains clouded, leaving her family without the closure they deserved. Even though the case never proceeded to trial, it underscores the growing importance of digital evidence in modern investigations. What do you think about this case? Do you believe the investigators were correct, or was Tony truly innocent, as his family claimed? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to leave a comment below. Thank you for your support, and if you have a case you'd like us to cover, feel free to contact us. Until next time,